a biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Child trafficking. It's a term that's as hard to say as it is to hear. Recently, there's been light shone into this dark and evil practice, and the conversation is starting to be brought out from under the rug, yet foremost around the world, it's Christian ministries and care organisations that have been pushing the agenda into the public sphere. For some reason, there is resistance in the mainstream media to talk about this really vile practice openly, and often efforts for publicity about child trafficking given into the mainstream only receive marginal, if any, attention. One case for point being the recent Jim Caviezel movie, Sound of Freedom. Today we're joined by two Aussie Jesus followers who have decided that it's not okay to sit on the fence and do nothing. Anthony Harrison and Matt Friedman join us to speak about their creative initiative to puncture the public conscience and bring about the light of Jesus in this very difficult to speak about issue. Welcome to 2020, Anthony Harrison and Matt Friedman.
Thank you, Tosh.
Hello.
It's great
to be here.
It's great to have you with us, guys. And all around Australia, we want to welcome your voice to shine a bit of a light into this very difficult to speak about area. And as I said at the top, I think it's also very hard to speak about. It's hard to imagine what these kids must be going through. It's hard to imagine as Christian people how we can do anything about it. But if we don't start the conversation right, nothing's going to change.
That's very, very true, Tosh. And, we really need to be a voice out there for the children in places and situations that really no child should ever find themselves in. And as Christians, it really is even more so our responsibility, as the Lord loves everyone and especially those kids going through what they're going through. So, yeah, I'm honoured to be here and have my good friend Matt Friedman, and his wife Sophie, is doing an amazing job out there in advocating and for being an ambassador for those children. But yeah, Soul You and Buttonheart Bear is made, Dosh.
Yeah, so you've got this website that our listeners, our Vision family around Australia can go to. It's called foreverfreedommovement.com. And at Forever Freedom Movement, you have an initiative there. It's a creative initiative around the character of Buttonheart the bear. Why don't you tell us a little bit about this initiative and what the plans for it are?
Yeah, thank you. Well, we had to consider how such a horrific topic and how we can find a way for everyone, people from all over the world, people doing everyday things and people in business, how we can all come together to be a voice for those children, a voice for the cause. So Buttonheart was uniquely created as the bear, as a Buttonheart bear. He's the Braveheart of bears. He's like the William Wallace of bears. And Buttonheart is incredibly uniquely looking. He's cute. He's different. And he was on his way to bear school and he was captured and put into a box. Oh. And we asked people to go onto our foreverfreedommovement.com to purchase Buttonheart and rescue him out of the box when he arrives. You'll have a little letter there from Buttonheart, and you rescue him out of the box. And once you've rescued him out of the box, you'll find under his arm is a unique number, and that's a unique number that identifies that Buttonheart with a particular person. Once you've rescued him and love him, then we ask people to take photos, videos, get creative, think differently at work, at home, out and about, in a car. The more you post, the more you share, the more you're saying, you know what, we need to stand together for the children, for these children in horrific places. And as you do, brands who come on board, sponsoring brands, because our methodology allows brands to have a deeper connection with our community, to come in and give random gifts of appreciation, appreciating people for taking that photo, for uploading, for sharing. So across the world, we look to be able to send gifts of appreciation to people for actually caring for those children in those places. And that's what Buttonheart is here to do. He also has accessories, so you have different jackets and hats. And as we grow our communities, we grow our movement, as people belong and join in to the Forever Freedom movement and the Buttonheart Club, then they're going to have more rewards, more discounts, more savings, more opportunities to share, be recognised on social platforms, and more brands coming into the mix and helping out.
So Buttonheart the bear is rescued from being caught in a box that he was trapped in on his way to school. And then, so there's a little bit of theatre when Buttonheart comes into the home. Mum and Dad bring the kids along and show the kids this story about this Buttonheart the bear being saved. And then the kids or the parents can bring that into their social media space and use that as a way of highlighting the work that Buttonheart the bear and the Forever Freedom movement is doing.
Yeah, that is correct. Yeah, it's a very easy way to help. Like, he's a quality bear. He's not one that we put away. He's a bear that we want everyone to go and share. And as we get more brands coming on, as I mentioned, we're going to be able to say, if you take Buttonheart to a certain cafe if they're sponsoring, then randomly someone might get a free coffee that day. If you take Buttonheart and take a photo with Buttonheart with a particular brand, like we've got our Ritual Soul Brew chai brand, if you've got the chai, take a photo, then Ritual Soul Brew chai will give random gifts of appreciation. So it's all about empowering advocacy, rewarding people for caring, and also a gift. Businesses can come on, purchase some of our Buttonhearts, give it to their staff, then the staff have something to smile about, something to get internally, take photos within their own company or organisation, and they could have a little bit of an internal promotional as well, all helping the cause, all getting goodwill within staff because they care for those children in those places.
And speaking about the care of the children in those places, with the Forever Freedom movement and Buttonheart the bear is obviously raising awareness and raising money for the fight against child trafficking. Can you tell us what brought you into the fight against child trafficking?
Well, as a father of 5 and a grandfather of 6 with another one on the way, which is good news.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And as a strong faith Christian, it's really our responsibility. We've got to, as Christians, get out there and be a voice, share our faith, be bold and passionate about our faith. And also some of these causes like human trafficking and sexual slavery is just not on. And I might invite soon Matt Friedman to share some of the stories that is happening out there. And when you hear Matt's stories and what he's experienced, what he's witnessed, or what he's doing, how can any of us remain silent? How can any of us not do something? And then Buttonheart is that way where, yes, you're purchasing Buttonheart, but there's that storytelling, that's that fun. He gives back. You become part of the Buttonheart Club. You get these rewards and discounts from major brands. There's this whole community that we're building around the world to make a difference. And it's Buttonheart's dream that he becomes the most loved, photographed, shared and talked about bear in the whole world. And I think we can do that together.
Buttonheart being the face of what you're taking out into the public sphere. It is a very cute bear. It's quite unique looking. It's got a little love heart for a nose, a little red love heart. You might be able to imagine as you're listening in as part of our Vision family. It's a beautiful little token that can be used. It's a beautiful symbol. But again, Matt, we want to welcome you to the program to share with us about what it is that you've seen out there on the front lines and what broke your heart to want to get in there and really start to advocate and get active for probably the most vulnerable people in the world, these kids that are caught in this horrific life.
Well, my story starts about 35 years ago. I was living and working in Nepal. I was a public health officer for the U.S. government, and I had the portfolio of HIV/AIDS. And at that time, we were finding girls 12, 13 years old who were HIV positive. Couldn't understand what was going on. This is a very conservative culture. So we went to the shelters where these sex trafficking victims were, and we interviewed them. And we heard pretty much the same story over and over again. And it went something like this. A human trafficker would go into a village and he'd flash a bunch of money around. He wanted people to think he was rich. He'd then go around saying, I'm looking for a wife. Don't want an urban wife. I want a village wife.
Oh.
Find a girl 12 years old, befriend her, go to the family and say, I'd like to marry your daughter. They're thinking, wow, he's rich, he's handsome, going to take care of our daughter, going to take care of us. In that part of the world, it's quite common to get married at that age. A couple of weeks later, they're marrying. After that, he goes to the family and says, I'm going to take your daughter to the capital, Kathmandu, but don't worry, I'll be back in 3 months. But that's not what's going to happen. Instead, he takes her to Mumbai, India, to the red light district where the brothels are. When she gets there, he puts her in a room and he says, honey, stay here, I'll be right back. As she was coming in, she saw these men and women milling around, having funny clothes. She says, no, don't leave me, I'm scared. He says, it's okay, I'll be right back. He goes to the madam who runs the brothel to get the $500 for having sold her to the brothel. He has the gold from the marriage, and he hands the wedding pictures over. He then leaves to go back to Nepal to do this again and again, maybe 40, 50 times in a year. The madam then goes into the room and says to the girl, guess what? Your husband just sold you to me, and you're going to be with 20 guys a day, every day, because I say so. You can imagine this girl shocked. No, my husband loves me. No, that's what happened. When many of these girls internalize what's going on, they say, well, I'll kill myself before I do those shameful things. I'm a good Hindu girl. The madam then brings out the photograph of the family and says, is this your mom, your dad, your brother? If you hurt yourself, we'll hurt them. So she's trapped in this situation. In order to make her into a prostitute, they'd simply shame her. They bring in a bunch of guys and use her over and over and over again till she eventually just lays back and accepts what happens to her. After that, she's put on the line, which means that she'll be with 20 guys a day, every day until after a couple of years, she gets what's called black eye, where she's so depleted physically and emotionally, nobody wants her, so they throw her out onto the street. So I was hearing this story over and over again, but I didn't understand the evil of it until I actually went to those brothels. I was invited by the Indian government to do public health check. I had a police officer with me, went into one of the brothels, and there was an 11-year-old trafficking victim. This girl saw this Caucasian guy, saw an opportunity, literally ran up, wrapped herself around me and said, save me, they're doing terrible things to me. I looked down at this child who was hysterically crying, wearing a dress 20 sizes too big because she was a child in an adult's world. I turned to the police officer and said, we need to get this girl out of here. He said, we can't do that. I said, what are you talking about? You're a police officer. He says, if we try to leave with her now, we'll both be killed. To make a long story short, we left. We came back with a lot more police, but of course she was gone. Now, I tell this story because I wasn't one of those 15-year-olds that said when I grow up, I want to be an activist. In fact, I did everything I could not to become one. But every once in a while, God puts on our heart a test. That was my big test. After that, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, and did what a lot of activists eventually do. Surrender to the fact that now that I've been exposed to this is what I'm going to do with my life. And 35 years later, here I am talking to you.
Life, culture, and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 on Vision.
You're going to share with us now some statistics about child trafficking around the world.
Well, modern slavery and human trafficking are pretty much used synonymously. And according to the statistics, there's about 50 million people globally that are in modern slavery and human trafficking. In fact, there are more slaves than there are in any other time in history. In fact, there are more slaves today than there are Australians. This breaks down to about 23 million of them would be forced marriages, but the other 27 million would be forced labor and sex trafficking, of which 6.3 million of them are forced prostitution, of which about 25% of them would be children. So we're talking about children as young as 5, 6, 7 in situations where they're forced to be with pedophiles in certain countries used on a regular basis. Unbelievable situation. Profits generated from this are about 236 billion US dollars a year, second only to drug trafficking. But the amount of money available globally is only about 400 million US, which translates to 0.13%. So the bad guys have a tremendous amount of money. The good guys have hardly any money at all. When it comes to the people who are fighting this, there's about 40,000 people like us globally that are addressing this issue against 500,000 greed incentivized criminals. We have to follow rules and regulations. They don't have to do any of that. And in addition to that, most people don't know much about this topic. But this is the most important thing that I want to say related to the statistics. Out of 50 million people last year. The world helped 133,000, which is 0.2%, not even a 0.5%. So you have all these people languishing in this situation, like the story that I just described, that are calling out and asking, like, where is the world? Why is it that nobody's helping us? And so this particular movement is here to address that issue, to step up and help people to understand that this issue exists. And we as human beings have a role to play in addressing this. And this is just one way of developing a campaign that solves the problem of the sensitivity of the topic. People don't want to hear about child sex trafficking. It turns them off because if they're compassionate, empathetic people, then they're thinking to myself, well, I know my kids. I see these children. I don't want to have that conversation. And so what happens when the topic comes up is people say, no, I don't want to have that discussion. By basically bringing a bear into the discussion, it softens it. It makes it easier. It allows for you to almost immunize the situation to allow for a conversation to take place. So this is a brilliant approach. I've been working on this topic for 35 years, and the biggest problem that we have is how do we open up the hearts and the minds of people to be receptive, to be part of the solution? And the bear in this campaign allows us to do that.
The whole subject, it's clawing for it, scratching for it, it's trying to get into the public conscience, but it's not able to get in. We saw with, not yet anyway, we saw with Jim Caviezel and The Sound of Freedom, when that movie came out, it was maligned in the United States. There were some people saying, oh, this is a fabrication, or they're saying you're glorifying child trafficking. They were trying to make out as though shining a spotlight onto this problem was somehow that Jim Caviezel and his organization was trying to profit from it. They were trying, and it came under all kinds of fire. Why do you think that is?
Well, okay. In the human trafficking world, there are two camps. One camp says eliminate prostitution and then human trafficking goes away. Another camp says legalize prostitution and human trafficking can be regulated and then it'll go away. So these two groups are constantly fighting. So anytime one of the groups tries to promote an anti-prostitution, anti-child sex trafficking approach, there's a group of people that are going to respond to this by saying, no, you don't understand what you're talking about. That's not real, et cetera, et cetera. It's the politics of a developmental topic like this that is very sensitive to a lot of people. Now, in the early days, we would go into great detail about kind of the pain and suffering of what happened to children. But to a certain extent, we created the problem of people not wanting to hear this because they were so shocked and so surprised and almost traumatized by what they heard that whenever the topic came up, they would say, well, I don't want to have this conversation. So what we need to do is to change the direction of the discourse to basically say, we're going to talk about a sensitive topic, but again, we're going to do it in such a way and that we can have the conversation with something that softens it, that makes it easier. It's kind of like going to the dentist's office and getting a lollipop after you get your teeth cleaned or whatever. So it offers that semblance of a balance that has to take place.
Coming up soon, we'll open up talkback lines for your thoughts or questions with Anthony and with Matt. But if you want to call in, the number is 1-800-316-316. And if you want to shoot in a text for your to have your say, it's 0447 488 316. And we've got about 3 minutes left before we head off to news. But in the concept of breaking open this as a talking point for broader community conversation, you used the word just there moments ago, Matt, a developmental topic. Can you share what it is what it means to bring a new conversation to the public consciousness and some of the challenges that we're facing with that?
Well, developmental topics are topics that are big problems that the world faces. It could be something like poverty or communicable diseases or a lack of girls' education. At a community level, it could be bullying. So there is an entire campaign or movement related to counter trafficking that does three things. Basically tries to prevent human trafficking, goes after the bad guys, which is prosecution, or on the protection side, offers shelters and so forth. And so what the Braveheart campaign allows us to do is not only raise awareness, but to raise money to give it to organizations that are actually on the front line addressing the issue of child sex trafficking. And for us to be able to address these things, we need resources. And so by selling the bear, you basically raise the resources, and those resources go off to the charity. And so at a time when you may have seen that U.S. government development assistance around the world has been cut, about half of the money that was available to address human trafficking no longer exists. So it was $400 million a year. Now it's about $220 million. So at this time, as human trafficking continues to grow, more than ever, we need everyone to take some responsibility, to understand the issue, to step up. And this campaign allows you to do it in a very simple way, but in an effective way, because you're not only developing the resources, you're also raising awareness at the same time.
Yeah, and I just speak into that, Tosh, too, if I may, real quick.
Please.
That, when you're holding Buttonheart, you're talking about what he stands for. It enables and empowers people to actually have that conversation that Matt's talking about. And also, it is a way, an affordable pathway for so many people, like hundreds of thousands of people can own and talk about Buttonheart. It's really starting to raise the money, raise awareness, and get people being able to, share what really is going on, which is horrific.
And it's not a very appealing subject, but it is one that, as the Lord tells us, when we do it for the least of these, when we care for the least of these, we're doing it unto Him. And we look at these little kids and we see great suffering and great vulnerability. And we just want to thank you, gentlemen, for the work that you're doing. Anthony Harrison, for the work that you're doing in organising funding, and Matt Friedman, for your work there on the ground with these children who are suffering. Welcome back to 2020, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Good to be here.
Matt, you were sharing with us about how you really got lassoed in by the heart of God to work with these kids who you're finding out were being basically entrapped, being sold a lie of marriage and prosperity, only to be taken to red light districts in countries outside of where you were there in Nepal. And you're coming upon these children and finding them at a time when they had been used up and discarded. And how was it that in those days when you first got started, you really found, after the burden of God in your heart, you found your hands and your feet started to find traction in this very murky and ugly world?
Well, I'll use a story in order to illustrate how I found myself getting deeper and deeper into the topic. So during that time in Nepal, I decided that I wanted to do something. I desperately wanted to kind of contribute to making this less of a problem for these young people. And so I decided I was going to write a book. As part of this book process, I went from shelter to interview the women and the girls who were in the shelter for sex trafficking. I went to one shelter, and there was a girl named Gita, and every time I approached her, she said, no, I don't want to give my story. But as I sat and interviewed all these other women, she sat nearby and she listened to everything that was being said. When I finished and I was about to leave, Gita comes running up and says, I changed my mind. You can have my story. So Gita sat on one side of the table. The rest of us were on the other side of the table. And over a 3-hour period, she told the worst story I'd ever heard of rape and torture and disease and betrayal and murder. I honestly didn't know what to say to this young woman. Finally, after a long pause, I said, wow, Gita, you must be so angry at those traffickers for the horrible things they did to you. She paused and paused. Then she said, no, I'm angry at you and you and you. She said, where were you? Wow. Said that every single day I woke up praying for somebody to come and help, and nobody came. She said that she went to school till she was 12. She knew that everything that was happening in front of the brothel was right out in the open. Nobody was doing anything. She said she wasn't angry at the traffickers. She said they are just what bad people doing what bad people do, bad things. She said she was angry at the good people at society for allowing a 15-year-old girl to be commercially raped 7,000 times only to eventually get AIDS, and she was dying. So she pretty much called us all out. She knew that the 40,000 people globally that were addressing this issue were insufficient to make a difference, and that the only way this was going to be addressed is that if the average person woke up, accepted the responsibility for learning about this, and then entered into something in order to help out with the process. So what the Buttonheart campaign allows a person to do is to enter into that space, to be able to do something by simply buying the bear, taking the photographs, talking about what it means to have the bear come out of the box. They become part of the awareness raising. They become part of the solution by giving the resources to the organizations that need them to be able to do the frontline work to get these people out of this situation. And so that's why this is so relevant and important. Just imagine a 12-year-old girl that is forced to be with 20 guys a day every day. Multiply that times the 6.3 million women and girls that are in that situation. How is it that we in this world can allow for this evil to prevail? We as Christians, we have to recognize the relevance and the importance of, at some point, drawing a line in the sand and saying, as a society, this is unacceptable. And that's what we're really trying to do with this particular, radio interview and all the awareness campaigns, is to say, come on, guys, it's time. Because the cost of not doing something is horrific. Because more and more young people are going to enter into this situation. That simply has to change.
So as our Vision family around Australia are listening in right now and hearing about Buttonheart the bear, hearing about the public promotion for social media use of the bear and promoting, what else can change in the heart of people who are listening? And there may be people who are hearing this for the first time who've never really taken the time to sit and think about what is involved with human trafficking. And I know from my own personal experience, when the movie Sound of Freedom came out last year, one of my own children, one of my daughters, it really touched her heart, and she went and she started doing research and started reading, and she was coming to me and she was saying, "Dad, do you know that this is happening, and these are the statistics, and this is the difficulties that these people are facing?" And I'm just going to be very real and very vulnerable here. A piece of me was just like, I just don't think I want to hear this. It's too hard to hear. I've got my issues that are overwhelming for me. I think it's going to resonate in the hearts of many people. Where do I put this? Like, what do I do with this? If I give too much attention to it, it's going to consume my heart. Why do you think that kind of resistance comes up in the lives of people like myself? And maybe there's a few around Australia who are hearing this very hard conversation and feeling a little overwhelmed. Why do you think it is that it's so hard to hear of a topic nowadays?
Because it is a child, and it is one of the most reprehensible things that can happen to a child. And it's repeatedly happening to a child. And that child is alone, and that child doesn't have anyone to support them. And so when we feel that vulnerability, our compassionate side and empathetic side gets turned on, but it's so overwhelming to think that this could happen to a child because of our own relationship with our kids and so forth, that's a normal reaction. And that is the reason why this campaign is so important. We are balancing the horrific element of this with a fuzzy bear. And so by having the fuzzy bear there, you can have a conversation. It neutralizes the kind of feeling that you just described by allowing a person to feel like, okay, I'm looking at that bear, and so I'm seeing something fuzzy, but I'm hearing this. So it changes the dynamic. And, I've been working on this for 35 years, and the thing that we struggled with many that feeling that you described. How do you get people to step out of their comfort zone to get involved? And so we're making it so easy. Buy a bear. The money goes to helping address this. Talk about this issue with the bear there. And all of a sudden, the dynamic changes. So we're changing the narrative. We're changing the approach. We're making it easy for people to have a conversation. And that's why this campaign is going to work.
And Anthony Harrison, your work with the creation of the campaign and Buttonheart the bear, It's quite innovative in creating a happy face on something that's so tragic. It is so easy to bury one's head in the sand and just think that it's going to be for someone like Matt, who's out there on the cold face. You know, he can figure his own funds out. He's a man of faith. He can figure God's funding out to his work. But really, there is now a conscience that is rising. And as I mentioned at the header of the program, it is the church. It's people of faith in Christ that are the ones that are out there who are doing the hardest work, doing the heaviest lifting. And you trying to bring a public face to this whole concept of child trafficking. How are you finding the process going as you take it out into the broader community with business people and getting uptake for the program for Buttonheart the Bear?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there's a few things to say to that. You know, when I ran an advertising agency, which was Australia's largest Christian aligned agency at its time, we found that whenever you were having a topic of say, children in poverty, you know, people didn't like to see those type of images. They always like to see the solution. And so taking that into consideration in the book of Acts, it talks about a time where everyone put into the middle what they had. Everyone cared. They did what they could do into the middle. So thinking of the book of Acts and we all working together where everyone benefits from helping out. So everyone gets back. When they give in, they get back. So when you buy Buttonheart and you share him, you get opportunities to receive back. Everybody's helping each other. And also about talents. You know, we all have talents and gifts. The Lord has predestined us to do something. Matt shared his journey. I've got mine. And I'm using my gift and talent to do something in cause marketing, in fundraising for charities where we do all the work, all the heavy lifting. We do it on behalf of them, and then we provide the funds so they can do what they do, what they want to do, rather than doing all the administration or the fundraising themselves. We come along and support them and then raise the money for them. I'll share a little bit about another charity that's come on board called Access Hope in Perth, and they've come along as a charity helping orphan children. And a lot of the orphan children can find themselves in slavery as well. And so this charity in Perth have come along, they've become part of the Buttonheart Forever Freedom movement, and we're able to also raise funds for them and support what they're doing in the orphanages, and again, Christian, sharing the gospel, sharing the truth, but also doing some, work in rescuing and restoring and helping those children. So what am I seeing happening? Like anything new, anything we pioneer, there's always a little bit of, what this is about. What are you doing? It's different. Yeah. It's not your traditional fundraising. It's definitely not your traditional fundraising. We're not a donation drive. We ask people to purchase and belong to a movement, to be part of other people all around the world who think the same and come together. When you've got movement, when you've got people and you've got funds, we can make impact, we can make influence. And that's why Soul U says we impact the social impact. We're impacting the likes of other charities like Access Hope and Destiny Rescue and others out there doing the work. We honour them for doing the work, but we do our work in helping them do their work. And then we get result, then we see the impact. And that's what this is all about.
And so you mentioned there another name, Soul U. Can you share with our Vision family what the work of Soul U is and where we can find that online?
Thank you. Yes, Soul U is sort of like an interesting blend of a marketing agency that helps fundraise, but also helps brands with a cause marketing campaign. We do it all for them. So brands are always looking to how they can benefit more when they actually do good and show good. And of course, charities are always looking for more funding and advocacy. So Soul U stands as a unique agency. We're working on other projects. Our second project is called Unconditional, where we're helping animals that give back to humans going through mental health. We've also got a project called One Way, which is that one way Jesus emblem symbol that was around in Jesus Revolution. Well, come on, church. If we can all come together, despite whatever denomination, whatever faith, as long as we believe Jesus is Lord and he's wanting to love everyone and welcome everyone into heaven, then if we can work together under the one-way movement, and we've created this character, a lamb. His name is Lamuel. He's a lamb that loves the Lamb of God. He loves Jesus. And this little character that we want to bring to market for Lamuel, we want to support like 20 to 30 Christian ministries and charities out there coming and working with us, sowing what they can into the mix. And then we go out to the world. And what's happened recently with the tragic loss of Charlie Kirk is really causing a stir and really getting people about freedom of speech, about the gospel, about telling the truth, about standing up for things that's happening in this world. Well, this project called One Way and Lamuel is a pathway for that one. And also Buttonheart. So all of these cause characters, we call them cause crusaders. We call them like these characters. They start off as a plush toy, but then we can animate them. We can bring them to life, and we can storytell through animation and other means. And that's what we want to do. We want to create Buttonheart, Lamuel, our other characters for other campaigns that we're doing, and they all work together. They all work as one. They're all telling a story of causes that really need our attention. And of course, as this topic of sexual slavery, it's a major, major cause that we must work together to solve.
Yeah, absolutely. And so your work with Matt is providing the public awareness and providing the promotional campaign, and Matt's work there on the ground, that's the relief work. That's the going after and helping and putting their hands up and going and serving these young girls and helping with the rescue. Matt, can you share with us what the work is on the ground that you're doing at the moment that Buttonheart is in aid of?
Well, I'll give you examples of a couple of the programs that I've worked on over the years to give you a general sense of kind of the direction that can go in. When I was in Nepal, we had young women that came back that desperately wanted to be part of the solution. They didn't want to just sit back and re-enter into society. They wanted to help address the issue. And so one of the programs that we supported basically had ex-child sex trafficking victims that would be at the border. And as people were crossing over, they would look for the traffickers and the trafficking victims. And if they saw, for example, a young guy with a couple of young girls, they would separate them and interview them and identify whether or not the girls knew what they were going to end up being. And as a result of that, they were able to stop a certain number of people from being in kind of a sex trafficking situation. Had another situation where a young girl came back and she was very angry, and she said, I'm going to spend the rest of my life just going around and helping communities to understand, what's happening with this. And so this girl was 14 years old. She had been in the brothels for 3 years, but she had HIV/AIDS. She was dying. We didn't have treatment at the time. And so she said, I'm going to go into the hills. I'm just going to tell people. And so we said, but you can't do that health-wise. And so finally she said, I don't care. What do I have to lose? So we sent somebody with her, a social worker, and she'd go to a community and sit down under what's called a people's tree and just start telling her story. And at first there were 3 people and 10 people and 20. By the end, maybe 50, 100 people, everybody crying, everyone saying, well, we didn't know anything about this. Oh my gosh, what can we do? And then the social worker would step up and say, well, then the community down the street, we did something, a registration, another one, we did a awareness raising and so forth. Let's decide right now what can be done in order to address this type of issue. And so right on the spot, things were able to be done. So for developmental issues to be addressed, you have to really understand the environment that you are kind of working in to see what is going to stick. How are you going to reach people? What are you going to do with people who have opened up their hearts and minds and soul to this concept? And then these programs that are most successful basically do that. But I want to say one other thing, going back to the point that Anthony was making about people stepping up. I mean, and this world needs a lot of healing. Human trafficking is one aspect. But if anyone on this call feels compelled because of this particular topic, and they can't really explain why, it's because we as human beings don't always pick our topics. Topics pick us. And so I didn't just one day wake up and say, oh, well, there's poverty and there's girls' education and there's human trafficking. It selected me. Yeah. And those people who feel this way, we want to give them a path to be a part of the solution. We want to give them the tools, the means, the education, and have them be ambassadors. And if you do that, you're heroic. Anyone who steps up and gets involved, I think it's heroic. And we should honor and we should support and we should recognize the relevance of this particular idea of us being volunteers or getting involved in these topics. Because by doing that, we help people to feel good about what they're doing. We're honoring the fact that they're using their mind and their heart and their time in order to be able to make a difference. And so this is very much a part of this particular campaign.
Yeah, I think part of the issue as well is in the world we get fed so much media where it's just about Sunday, Monday, happy days, Tuesday, Wednesday, happy days. It's life's good. Let's just enjoy the good things. Let's just relax and take it easy. But it is a big world out there with some very dark and shady corners in it. And as disciples of Christ, he calls us into those places. He's not going to call everybody, but the shattering the stigma, I think, is so important. The shattering the stigma of talking about it, just like this lady that you were involved with, who decided to go back to the village and start telling the story, and people didn't even know in those nations in which it was happening. And so, to some degree, someone's got to take up the mantle in the West, in the developed countries, and speak that. And you guys are giving that opportunity right now. If there are people who are stirred right now, hearing this story, thinking, what can I do other than buy Buttonheart the Bear? And we would encourage everyone to storm the website over there at Forever Freedom Movement and pick up your Buttonheart the Bear. What are some of the talking points that people can use when they have a Buttonheart the Bear to just open the conversation with people and to start to break down that wall of stigma?
Anthony, why don't you go with that one?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's, starts to whatever level somebody wants to. That's why Buttonheart enables that conversation. They might just be quite light around saying, to their children, their loved ones, not every child is as blessed as what you are living in Australia in a home that's comfortable and safe and secure. There's children around the world that really are in not such a nice place, and that might be where they stop. It might stop there, but that child might always remember the day they got their Buttonheart. And because Buttonheart is the way he's been made and the way he looks and the way he sits, and he's very photographic actually in all angles and purposely made, then that child's going to remember the day he got Buttonheart. Our grandchildren they want to save their own money to buy their own Buttonheart. They don't want Papa to gift them one. They want to buy one because they know what Buttonheart stands for. And then there's other people, as I mentioned before, you might have a legal practice or a company buy 10 for their staff and gift them for Christmas. Christmas is a great time because people are going, what am I going to buy someone? What am I going to buy someone? Well, why did you buy them a Buttonheart that's got a gift that keeps on giving, that's got his unique number, that randomly can give a gift of appreciation from supporting brands? Tomorrow morning, I've got a call with a major surf brand, and hopefully they come on and we create a board short and a swim top for Buttonheart, and they'll be able to randomly give gifts of their products all around the world to people who take photos of the surfy Buttonheart. So get along, be a part of it. And as I said, you can. Matt's written 14 books. He's very humble. He's written 14 books. He's been on TED Talks, and there's literature, there's merchandise. Go deeper. The stepping point, and you can go as deep and as much as you want to. You might decide to join one of our charities, one of our cause beneficiary partners, and belong to what they're doing and support them in a greater and deeper way. But Buttonheart is definitely a start of that process.
I'd like to just add one thing to that, is that as Christians, many of us have good lives. We have jobs that we like. We have families. We have our faith, our church, and so forth. But many of us feel a certain emptiness or a lack of purpose now and then. We just feel this inkling of the fact that much of what happens in our life is we take, but we don't give something back. Here's an opportunity to give back. Just think about this. 6.3 million women and girls in forced prostitution, forced to be with anywhere from 5 to 8 or 10 or 20 people a day, and we can be helpful in addressing that. So even if just you buy the bear and you basically do the photographs and you promote this and so forth, you've done something. And that something may contribute to the right organization that is there at the right time to be able to help that child out of this situation. So you are part of the solution. We are just helping people to be part of it. Because the cost of not doing this is that more and more people will end up in this situation. And you've heard what my story is. You heard the PG version of it. If you get into the details, it is as horrific as you can imagine. We cannot allow this to happen. And all of us can be a part of the solution.
Matt Friedman and Anthony Harrison, we want to thank you for coming on 2020 today and ripping the Band-Aid off and showing us something that's underneath. God bless you guys in your work, and we hope and pray that everyone's going to go over to foreverfreedommovement.com. Thanks for joining us today, gents.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
God bless.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.